Worlders, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emma and I just finished my first book of 2018. Okay, so I didn't actually just finish it. I believe I actually finished it on January 7th. I believe that is my official end date with this book, but I wanted to give myself some time to see if I finished another book in January before I did a book talk on this book, and I didn't. And then I also was sick all last weekend. I was so sick. I didn't get out of bed. I was just absolutely, completely miserable. Actually, my last video that I posted was actually supposed to go up like a week before it did. I was just so sick. But I'm back. I'm feeling better. I haven't really been coughing the last few days, which is good. And I am ready to do this book talk. So let me introduce the book I read before I start talking about it, because I just almost did. But the first book that I read was We All Fall Down by Natalie D. Richards. This is the third book I've read by Natalie D. Richards, and much like the other two books I've read by her, they were good, but they were not amazing. I like her enough to go back and read her multiple times over, or not multiple times over, but to read her books more than once. I'm always hoping that the newer books will be better than the older ones, but they all kind of fall in the same area for me. They all come out at about a 3-star rating for me, but I always kind of go back to them. They always have some really interesting premises. In this one, it is about two characters who are best friends, Theo and Paige, and they both have been harboring secret feelings for each other. Paige has pretty much been in love with Theo since like middle school or high school, and Theo realizes his feelings a little bit later on. They're older, they're like probably in their junior year of high school. So for Paige it's been about a 3 or 4 year, whereas Theo has not been as in love as long. So Theo decides that he's going to tell Paige how he feels about her, and on that night Paige is being hit on by another guy that Paige is thinking about pursuing because Theo doesn't seem interested in her mind. So Theo gets really jealous and is already drinking to kind of give himself some liquid courage, you know, and ends up punching Paige in the face instead of the guy who he's about to get into a drunken fight with. And when he punches Paige in the face, he breaks her jaw. Then they go about 6 months, it seems to me, without talking, and this all happens on a bridge. I forgot to mention that. It all happens on a bridge, and Theo is hired to do a job over the summer on the bridge, and whenever he's on the bridge, he basically hears in surround sound the events of that night repeating over and over and over and over again. At the same time, Paige is doing experiments on the water that goes under the bridge, and every time she goes to the bridge, it's like she finds something from that night, and she is pretty much drawn back to the bridge, and like she sleepwalks to the bridge at one point, and they just have like this magnetic pull to the bridge between the two of them, and they're always there. So the premise of the story is basically these two, along with another local in town, trying to figure out what's haunting the bridge and why it's haunting the bridge before it's too late. So the way I'm going to do this book talk is I'm going to talk about my non-spoiler thoughts for people who haven't read the book and are thinking about reading it. You can get my thoughts on things without giving too much away, and then I will let you know right before I go into the spoilers what my spoiler type thoughts are. I also want to let you know that I will have my blog post, which is a review for this book, linked down below. I do talk about everything in my book review on my blog, but my spoiler points I take the spoilers out of, so you kind of do get an idea of all of my thoughts without me giving anything away, really, if that makes sense. Whereas when I do talk about the spoilers in the video, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth. So let's get started with my review. The first thing I kind of want to talk about is the mental health in this book. Both Paige and Theo suffer from different types of mental health. Paige suffers from pretty extreme anxiety. She like is anxious about everything. She's always paranoid. She has some insomnia, some sleepwalking. So she has a very extreme case of anxiety. I also think, I can't remember if Natalie D. Richards ever comes out and officially says it, or if it's just some clues and hints dropped along the way, but I also think that Paige is suffering from some PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder with what happened with her and Theo on the bridge that night. I can't remember if it's ever really said, but I do get the feeling that she is suffering a little bit from that as well. Theo, on the other hand, much like Paige with the PTSD, I can't remember if it's ever officially said that he has anxiety and what seems like depression to me. It might be early in the book and I just had forgotten about it, but he's on all sorts of meds to try to help with that. And when he first starts hearing voices, he's like, yep, you know, like I'm already crazy. Like I'm already crazy. So yeah, let's just add voices to it. So he's not overly surprised by hearing voices. He also has ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder, which is something I had never heard about until I read this book. But I did a little bit of research afterwards, and it's kind of, they explain it in the book as well, but it is a disorder for where people have trouble with impulse control, and they also have trouble with authority. And I did a little bit more research. I didn't write them in my notes because I apparently wasn't that organized. I'm trying to figure out where to hold my notes. That's why I'm moving around so much. When I especially when I did the research after reading the book, Theo definitely fits every description I found of OOD really, really well. And I think the author did a really good job of showing his mental health state as well as Paige's mental health state throughout the novel. One thing that I will say is that it was mentioned, it was almost overly mentioned though. Like instead of letting the descriptions kind of like, more so with Paige than with Theo, like Theo through his actions, especially if you went and did the research afterwards, his OOD was evident. I think the word anxiety was in every single one of Paige's chapters. It was one of those dual perspective novels, so you did get Paige and Theo's perspective, and I think I would not be surprised if the word anxiety was mentioned in every single Paige chapter and in almost every single scene in Theo's chapters that Paige was a part of. And it was really cool to see how two characters with such strong, or not with such strong's not the word, with such evident mental disorders could fall in love the way that they did. I will say the beginning of the novel drew me in so much. I actually talked about it in my 2018 TBR. I'm going to actually insert a clip right here of me talking about how much I loved this novel at the beginning. But it's called We All Fall Down by Natalie D. Richards, and I have been loving this book so far. I've read two other books by Natalie D. Richards, and this so far has been my favorite book by her. I'm kind of obsessed. It's really good, and this might end up being my book talk for January. We'll see. But what I noticed afterwards is that, to me, from about a page, like probably 115-ish to right before the last 20 pages, it felt like they were in the same circle. It was the same thing. Paige would feel the same thing and then get over it at the end of her chapter, and then you'd have Theo's chapter, and then Paige would go through the same cycle over and over and over again. So to me, it was getting repetitive. There was a time where I was like, oh my god, if I have to listen to Paige talk about this one more time, I might just drop the book and forget about it. Luckily, the last like 20-ish pages drew me in again. I think I read the last 20 pages extremely quickly. I really wanted to know how it ended, and I really wanted to know what was haunting the bridge. And so the last 20 pages brought me in again. I didn't love how it ended, but it did bring me back into the novel, whereas I was almost ready to drop the novel. So the one thing you guys might have already picked up by the summary and what I've talked about so far is that Paige, or not so much Paige, the police are outside. Sorry, I got distracted. A police car just drove by my house, so we had to go and look. We're nosy. Anyways, I think I was talking about the romance in the novel. What you guys may have noticed by the way I described Theo is that he is what would probably be considered a bad boy. And if you guys didn't pick up, because I don't think I've really talked about it much, Paige is a good girl. So, you know, they fell in love, because what doesn't want that trope? And at first I was like, oh my god, it is the trope. It's the bad boy loves the good girl and the good girl loves the bad boy and they can't be together trope. What I think Natalie D. Richards did so well though is that she wrote these characters that you didn't even realize that you were really falling in love with their love story until they had their first romantic moment, and then you were just like blown. I don't want to say you. I don't want to talk in the second person. I was blown away by how much I loved their romance and how beautiful I thought it was, and that I was even surprised to realize that I shipped the characters. The other thing that I want to talk about before I go into the spoiler stuff is that there were certain descriptions in this novel, particularly the bridge itself, that really confused me. If you look really carefully at the cover of this book, you kind of can see the bridge, you can kind of see the bridge in the background of the title. And that is how I originally kind of pictured the bridge. Hold on, let me focus again. I think I'm back to being focused. So it looks like it's like a bridge, a wooden bridge in the middle of the woods that like people would maybe just go for hikes around and stuff. But when it was described in the novel, it's in like the main, it's in like almost like their downtown area. It connects the two sides of the town, and it sounds like it's really high up in the air, like a train track bridge. But the thing that really confused me about this whole bridge in general was just the way that it looked and like where it was, because there were times even in the novel it still sounded like it was in more of a woods area, not very big, like not a populated area, but then there are times where it's described as being populated and all of that. So the bridge itself, like, which is a character in the novel, the bridge is one of the main characters in the novel, was so confusing to me, and I really did not like that. And that's the last thing I'm going to talk about before I go into spoilers. I do want to say though that I did give this book, for anyone who might be thinking about reading it, I did give it a rating of 3 stars on Goodreads and a 3.24 out of 5 stars on my blog. It is a good book. I don't know if I would recommend it necessarily, but I did think it was good, and if you are a Natalie D. Richards fan, it does feel like a Natalie D. Richards book. Let's move into spoilers. To me, throughout the whole novel, it felt like this story was going to have some tie-in with suicide. I felt like there were a lot of places where either suicide was mentioned or alluded to or something like that, to the point that I was getting towards the end and trying to make predictions in my head. And I came across this paragraph on page 218, and it says, Melanie starts to say something else, but Denny calls Theo back. Thank God. Though I'm going to be working below him. From below he will look like that shadow I saw, like someone who might want to jump. A little while earlier in the book, she had been at the bridge alone, and she saw a shadow that looked, the way it was described, seemed paranormal, like a ghost that was reliving the way it died. So I kept thinking that in some way this was gonna be someone, the person haunting the bridge was gonna have committed suicide or something along those lines. There was even a time that I really thought and wondered if it was gonna be like a We Are Liars plot twist. One of them has been dead for a year or something like that, but it didn't come out that way at all. You guys did read the novel. You guys probably know that it was a like spiritual haunting or a emotional haunting or something like that, that's fueled by, an energy haunting I think is what they called it, that's fueled by the energy that people bring to the bridge. And Paige and Theo's mental health disorders were kind of what fueled the bridge, especially Paige's anxiety, and somehow they broke it. I don't know, the ending was so confusing to me, which was actually going to be my next point, and that transition happened perfectly. But the ending was so confusing to me because I didn't necessarily understand the energy haunting that was happening, and then it ended up being Paige's mental health was what broke it, or Paige somehow was the haunting, and that just, the way that it added up did not make any sense whatsoever to me, to the point that if you understood the ending, like message me on Instagram or Twitter. They're linked down below, and explain it to me, because I did not really understand the ending at all. I have been trying to understand this ending through writing my review, planning this video, and now talking through rehearsing this video and now talking in this video, and I still don't think I understand the ending all that well. And then the ending, not the ending scene, but like the climactic scene on the bridge also confused me, where characters were standing, how Theo fell through, what the black mass was. All of that confused me as well. The final thing I really want to talk about in this book talk, I'm not sure, I probably could have talked about this in the non-spoiler section, but I wanted to be on the safe side and not bring any spoilers in by accident. But for me, I thought that this was such a cool way to look at how abuse affects people, because some people may read this novel and look at Theo like an abuser. He was drunk, he hit her, and all of that, but then he was remorseful and wanted to make it up to her and wanted to show how sorry he was, whereas Paige's therapist was talking about him like he was an abuser. Her parents were treating him like he had been abusing her for years and all of that. And I kind of sat back and I thought about it. Would how I feel about the Paige and Theo situation be different if I had been abused in the past? Luckily, thank God, I never have. Hopefully I never will. I don't wish that on anyone ever, but maybe the way that someone would feel about the incident in this novel would change. And it really made me think hard about if a character like Theo, who it was a one-time thing and it was an accident, is a forgivable character. And I really, really liked that about this novel. To this day, even after finishing the novel and knowing that Paige did ultimately forgive him, I'm still not sure if him having hit her in a drunken rage was something forgivable. So you guys will have to let me know in the comments down below if you think that Theo is a forgivable character or not. But yeah, that is my thoughts on We All Fall Down by Natalie D. Richards. Like I said, I gave it a rating of 3.24. I will have my blog review linked for it down below. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, Worlders!